for the farmers and producers and the makers. What we even here for? Occasionally I ask it. I know it's more than struggling, anticipating the casket. Reap what we sow, trying to fill up my basket. Life's a plantation, I self-law and master. Over the plot I've been granted on this planet. Now it's slanted, cause the chosen been supplanted. But if you overstand it, it was spoken. Fractured, but we ain't broken. Even though some would rather play the role of token, we growing. Black through the essence of a presence. We carry the blood of gods, we carry the mind of peasants. Rich black gardens, future look more like Eden. Multiply seeds like the seed banks in Sweden. Rep my planners on plan according to season. B1 code, switching it up is treason. Black power, family what we eat. Either we get fed or we feed. B1AG.
What's going on? What's going on? What's going on? Welcome back to B1AG. Here at B1AG, we focus on Black agricultural production, education, marketing, health, food, nutrition, and economics, all for the Black community and for the Black family. I'm John Henry Harris, and we have Farmer Brown, the MC. Hey, y'all. Welcome back to B1AG. We hope that everything is going well for you. We hope you're feeling good, smelling good, and ready to tackle the rest of this week with the vigor it's going to take for you to be successful and prosperous. Okay. Now, y'all remember, I'm going to show my age a little bit, but, back in the 80s, where they had the burger wars. You had McDonald's versus Wendy's versus Burger King. Everybody was fighting to be the big burger dog on the block. We got the best burgers over here. Well, can y'all see the same thing happening with vegan burgers? Plant-based meats is a growing business. And right now, Beyond Meat is the big dog on the block. They're like the flagship brand when it comes to vegan burgers and meatless plant-based meats. But as this market continues to grow, there will be other producers of plant-based meats. We see other producers, but Aldi's, they are introducing a vegan burger that is 60% cheaper than the Beyond Meat burger. So we have to ask, is there a vegan burger war brewing? Will they try to duplicate that burger war that they had during the 80s as more vegan burger producers enter the market? But we're also going to take a deeper dive into looking at exactly what goes into producing these vegan burgers, as they're all tied to the lessening of emissions. So even though there's two levels to this, we're looking at it from a consumer standpoint and the way they're going to market this to us, but also how this is all tied to the grander scheme of things when they're trying to lessen the amount of emissions produced with our food. So, Farmer Brown, what say you?
First, I'd just like to say peace to the B1 family. Hope everybody's doing well. Energy return on investment. Grand Rising family. Energy return on investment, EROI. For the amount of effort I'm going to put into obtaining something, am I going to get a little more in return? When we think about these vegan war brewing, I guess it also ties into this concept of quantity over quality. There was a such time where there was no such thing as a restaurant, no such thing as a fast food joint, burger joint. Then there was one. There was a McDonald's. Then came a Burger King. Then came a Wendy's. And so we've watched over time of this concept of a burger joint came about. We've watched that there became a competition. Hey, I want to sell more burgers than you. Okay, well, I can sell them cheaper than you. And so this war has continued to where we're at in 2021, where we realize a majority of what we call North Americans get their food from one of these fast food joints who are competing with one another. And so a lot of times, in many cases, this competition for quantity, just being competitive in the market will sometimes compromise quality. And so as we're talking about this vegan war brewing, I think there's a more complex conversation to be had. And I would like to break it down from more of a codified equation standpoint, more than opinion. When we think about one of the main flagship, I would say the Nike of vegan burgers or plant-based meats is plant-based meats. We also know one of the major funders of plant-based meats is Bill Gates. And so I think we're going to have a very interesting conversation today.
Now the grocer Aldi. Now they are trying to please their crowd, the people that shop with them by offering more vegan alternatives because they are demanding that. So the burger patty that they're offering is 60% cheaper than the Beyond Meat patties, and it's called the Ultimate No Beef Burger, and it's mainly made from pea protein. Now, they have seen a spike in people demanding plant-based products, and they are able to offer these plant-based products at a cheaper price, which should be a good thing. Competition is a good thing. And if you do want these plant-based burgers and they're pea protein, so it's an identifiable plant, you have that option, and you don't have to necessarily pay what Beyond Meats is charging, because now you have more options, which is a good thing. But bro's talking about the energy return on investment, and with Beyond Meats, that's been heavily pushed and financed by Bill Gates. And we all know Bill Gates, he has a lot of agendas and things going on that he's pushing, especially with climate change, fighting climate change with the emissions. So to decrease emissions, they are, trying to tie emissions to all facets of our life, including food production and how we eat.
We have an infographic real quick to kind of, before we segue into the deeper conversation, if you could pull it up about EROY to get a better understanding. A lot of times dealing with the usual suspects, they complicate things, but simple, stupid, as my grandfather would say, energy return on investment. That's the usable energy from a resource divided by the energy expended to obtain the resource. And so here we have a family of ants. It's 2 adults, 1 baby. And so you see this good basket, this basket representing wealth, this basket representing a needed resource to bring back to your anthill, your home, your community. And so if you just have 1 ant, your breadwinner, going to obtain these calories that can be obtained in this basket is going to cost me 5 calories of energy. To go anywhere, you're going to have to exert energy, capital, some form of energy to obtain what you want. And so upon reaching that basket, there's 20 calories to be gained. An ant, it can carry, 8 times its weight. And so it's going to take 5 calories to get back. Good morning, sister. And so this is 10 calories burnt, to get this 20 calories that's obtained in this basket, right? Going to the bag. Now, if you have this 1 breadwinner going back to the anthill, I only now have 10 calories because I burnt 5 going and burnt 5 coming back. So I have 10 to be distributed to 3 people. The one that went and obtained the calories, and the 2 recipients being what we would call family or community. Is this sustainable? How do you're basically going to be dividing 10 calories by 3. And so if each of them are getting 3 calories, was it worth 5 calories burnt and 5 calories going and 5 calories burnt coming back? Was it worth it? This is, when we say this equation this is when we think about the people like Bill Gates, the people who are making legislative decisions, or the people that are advising them, These are the equations, but I want you to hear from Bill Gates, Malcolm. When we think about these equations, this is what I want the family to understand. The companies that are making our food, producing our food, distributing our food, these are the equations that are going to determine, what's the best way forward. Are we going to get more bang for our buck?
Climate change comes because we're emitting lots of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, and it causes the earth to heat up. We need to get our carbon emissions down. So I think of it mathematically. We start with the number of people. Each of us is using services that require energy, like heating or air conditioning, transport. And so we have how much energy each of those services use. And then we have how much carbon comes out for each unit of energy. So once you multiply those together, that's where you get about 36 billion tons of CO2 being emitted. To make that come out to a number about zero, how are we going to change the four factors? The first one, population, that's going up. We're going to get to over 9 billion this century. On services per person, yes, rich countries can use a bit less, but because places like India and Africa, who still don't have air conditioning and refrigeration, actually, we want this number to go up. We want people to have modern lifestyles, and so the total services will increase. Now, this next factor, the energy used per service, their innovation is going to help. We'll get this down, but only by about a factor of 2 or so. And so that leaves our final factor, CO2 per unit of energy. That's where we're going to have to do something super dramatic. We're going to have to use sources of energy that emit no carbon dioxide to get from 36 billion over here down to a very, very small number and avoid catastrophic climate change.
If the family can remember, I don't know if you have that. So I want to pay very close attention to his equation. It looks real cute and simple on the infographic, but a lot of legislation, a lot of global decisions are being made. You think of the World Health Organization, you think about a lot of this Build Back Better initiatives here by the guy occupying the White House. A lot of these decisions are being made by these equations. This last quick video, and then we'll get into our conversation.
In this year's annual letter, Melinda and I take the toughest questions we get asked and give our answers. One that's come up for a long time is, as we make the world healthier, is the population going to get so big that feeding everybody and maintaining the environment is going to be impossible? Here we can see a chart that looks at the total world population over the last several hundred years. And at first glance, this is a bit scary. We go from less than 1 billion in 1800, and then 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7.4 billion where we are today is happening even faster. So Melinda and I wondered whether providing new medicines and keeping children alive, would that create more of a population problem? What we found out is that as health improves, families choose to have less children. And this effect is very, very dramatic. We find that in every country of the world, this is repeated. The population growth goes down as we improve health. So we've taken that chart that shows the global population growth, and we've actually extended it out all the way to 2100. And we can see that instead of continuing, it actually flattens out. Another way to see that is through this rate of population growth. And you can see that in the 60s, that reached a pretty high number, over 2% per year, and it's now come way, way down. Now, 11 billion people, still a lot, but the good news is that the faster we improve health, the faster family size goes down. And so we can feel great about saving those lives.
Bro, before we get started into this conversation, I mean, I just got to point out something. The healthier we get, the less children we have. That does not make sense to me. That's very counterintuitive, and is he just blowing smoke?
It's called the Malthusian theory. The Malthusian theory, Thomas Malthus. Most people who've gone to any sort of ag course, economics, anything dealing with products and services understand that there was some people in the 1800s that felt like the population of the planet was going to reach a peak where the planet could no longer absolutely. The planet can no longer provide the services. You know, he's talking about air conditioning, refrigeration. Here at B1AG, we talk about food security. I think politics is a little bit above our pay grade, but like the brother said, you know, sometimes you got to read between the lines of what's being said. When we think about this equation of reducing carbon emissions to zero, not 5, not 4, 0, you have to look at, okay, he out of his mouth said, well, we want more people to have refrigeration and air conditioning. You know, that's a good thing. We want people to be able to eat. And so if it's more people that we have to provide this for, then we know it's going to cut down on emissions. And so to cut down on emissions, maybe if we cut down on people, maybe if we give them this great health care, these great therapies, I would implore the brothers and sisters to study what's been going on in Africa with this mindset. We know Africa, actually, the continent, Al-Kebalan, has the lowest or has the youngest population. We're competing, you know, the people making these decisions are actually at a 0 birth rate, meaning the people that Bill Gates represents, they're not reproducing like the people that say in Africa, Nigeria, and all these countries where he said, oh, they're so poor and they can't access these resources. And so, you know, sometimes you got to get in the mind of your opponent to understand where they're coming from. You know, it's taking the emotion out of it. Like we said, I could be blind and read between the lines of what's being said. It's almost double speak. But saying that to say we're talking about this vegan war, and we were having this conversation about some of the different methods of implementing medicine. I don't know if you have that infographic. We had touched on it a little bit before, and then we can get back to the burger thing. But I want the family to kind of connect these dots. This is real. You know, these are the receipts. I think when we were talking about it, I think people thought we might have just been, you know, shooting from the side of the hip. But these are accredited research institutions, Cambridge, UC. This is research going on, and this goes back to the 90s. And so as crime bills were being passed, there was also research trying to figure out how to make people more healthy.
Introducing mRNA through our plants, through your salads, through your leafy green vegetables. Jabby meals. You know,
people doing some deep thinking right now.
Trying to make jabby meals. Plant-based jabby meals. Can y'all hear me, family? So this word healthy, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, healthy. You have to think about what they say, what they mean when they say healthy. Healthy in their eyes, not in necessarily the Most High's eyes.
So as we take this back to this war between, you know, veganism, hey, I can produce these plants a lot cheaper than you. Everything that's being produced on this planet is the goal, you know, what they say, money makes the world go round. The goal is to get the most profit. I want to make the most profit. I can't compete with my competitors if I'm not making as much profit as them. And so if I'm willing to sell a product so much cheaper than my competitor, then one has to ask, what is the overall profit? And I think when we think about capital and profit, a lot of times we fall into just seeing fiat. And so there's 9 main areas of capital. So you have financial capital. This is the means pretty much humans use for exchange of goods and services. You have material capital. That's beyond money. This is earth, physical goods, raw materials, things derived from the earth. We have this B1AG conversation. There's natural capital. This is plants, animals, water, air, soil, and the like. Are you in a country that has these? These countries that need all of this assistance in their health typically be the places where they have this natural capital. Social capital, interpersonal connections is a form of currency. It keeps this energy flow going, right? Intellectual capital. This is the knowledge that you possess, acquire, and exchange with others that drives global education, how we see the world, how we view this dynamic of, okay, it might be so many people. How can we make sure they live better, or less of them that we need to make live better? Experiential capital. So a lot of times we assume that we have to have a degree or some sort of accreditation, but sometimes your experience is just as important and just as knowledgeable. Somebody on here earlier said mad scientists. Are we creating enough mad scientists within our B1 communities that are addressing these same equations? Not the social part of it, not the emotional part of it, but these very specific equations. There is a spiritual capital. When we talk about the Most High, I believe we were all given this credit account upon, being put into whatever respective body corporation that we've been put into, and we have to spend wisely. And then cultural capital, and this is the currency of a culture. It's things like art, music, stories, histories, things of that nature. And so when we think about the energy driving our food systems, we can't limit our ability, because I know we talk to some people, oh man, it seemed like it would be so much to start my own garden. Man, I ain't got that much capital to start my own farm. But when we start incorporating other forms of capital in relation to all of these other things that go into how our food is produced, energy. You hear Gates talking a lot about energy emissions. And so, yeah, these big tractors, going off thousands of acres of grain and everything, those are emitting a lot of CO2 emissions. When you think about these large scale cattle operations where you have like thousands of head of livestock, yes, the flagellation, the urine, the feces going into the waterways, congested like that, it's absolutely going to create an issue. We come from a people that were sustainable. If we're just using what we call Turtle Island as an example, it was a time where ruminants, just like cows, they were bison. They walked across the plains. Our ancestors ate them. We didn't have these issues, but when it became this competition, Bro and I were talking about this before we got on here. Hey, it's good to have something accessible to you. Absolutely. I love the thought of going to a store. There's something I want. I can give you $1. This representation of my time and energy, and in return, I get a product. I get a service. But it comes a point when you have these competing factions that, okay, you're going to start shooting yourself in the foot as a consumer to incentivize them to produce. And so I would be interested. I haven't delved deeply into what Aldi is using to create these 60% cheaper vegan products, but I have to wonder, what is their profit that they're looking to gain? Because somebody who has all the money in the world, they're not necessarily looking to make more money. That may not necessarily be their form of capital that they're wanting to increase.
But I could also say, just from an economic standpoint, that's my area, is economics. When you only have one big dog on the block, he can set the price. Because who's gonna test him? I set the price. This is what it costs. This is what if you want this is what you got to pay me. Now, when you start having more people come around, like, well, I got the same thing. If he's charging you this, I can give it to you for 60% cheaper. It's not necessarily they're trying to gain, they're just trying to get market share. And maybe the big dog, he's charging what he's charging, but he's charging his price above market price because when you have a monopoly, you basically set the market. When you have competition, that's when the the market will set the price. So as we get more people, more producers, more people getting into this plant-based meat, plant-based burger market, the price is a natural progression for the price to come down. It's a natural thing. Because when you're the only one, if you're the big dog on the block, whatever you charge, that's what people are going to pay. Because there is no market to compare it to.
When we think of these different forms of capital, I mean, it's a great point. I think about the record industry. Would you agree that, it's a handful of people that own the record industry now?
Absolutely.
This is hip hop.
Like
Use hip hop for example.
It literally goes down to like 5 to 7 companies.
Hip hop at a time, just like nature, agricultural products was something that the earth produced, right? Our ancestors produced the hip hop talent we see today. And there was a very codified effort over time to slowly co-opt this naturally occurring thing called hip hop. And it's a cultural capital. I want the family to keep these in mind. Slowly over time, it wasn't overnight. It happened over decades to where now the only way you can enjoy this hip hop is through a device that I control. It's only a handful of companies you're going to hear this hip hop that y'all make. It's only a handful of ways you can hear it. Ain't no CDs, ain't no cassette tapes. How do we apply this same model when I think about the genius of people like Master P, this whole concept of independent, and all of this ties into our food security, the type of codification, the type of mindset that we're inevitably going to have. There has to be a counter to the other competition. While Priority Records and Universal and Sony were competing to have all of the market share of what this thing called hip hop was, there was a person called Percy Miller, Brian and Ronald Williams, that decided, no, I'm gonna come out the trunk. This out the trunk concept is localizing our food systems. I'm gonna come up with a way, since I know people like this music, since I know I can produce it from Soulja Slim, C Murder, TRU, Hot Boys. Since I know that there's a way that I can produce this thing that people want to eat, and here we're talking about food, how can I get it directly to the consumer without having to go to Sony, Universal, or I forget the other.
Now it's
or Google. Okay, that means I got to go directly to the people. If I get my whole business brand dependent upon going through Google or Sony or one of them, they might come to me and say, hey, you got to put on the dress if you want to get your music heard. Hey, you got to accept, 1 cent on the dollar if you want your music heard. And so what we don't want to do as a community is to get ourselves where we're in this compromised food security situation, because all else, if you don't eat to get to the next day, nothing else matters. And so it's like, how can we apply the mental prowess, the cultural capital, the sweat equity that we already have? We have an experiential capital. Our ancestors did this work. It wasn't something we just read about. Like, they did this work out of necessity for hundreds, if not thousands, tens of thousands of years. And so these are the advantages that we have coming into it, as he's talking about carbon emissions. Hey, we can cut down on using these tractors because we've got this cultural buy-in within our community, using, influencers to decide, hey, we need a section of us that have decided, like, yeah, it's good for me to exert my energy learning how to produce something out of the ground. No, maybe I can't expect the same check that somebody who's going to go to an office and get working the system, the music, the food industry, the way they do it. But because we've been codified over the last 10 years, because we thought about this ever since this was brought to our attention in 2020, that the food system was severely compromised. We spent the next 10 years going into 2030. We know the UN has a 2030 agenda, but the melanated community, the B1 community, got a 2030 agenda too. And so we're going to leverage all of these different forms of capital to come up with a much more sustainable way of getting these healthy vegan-based products to the people that want them. We already know on a global scale they're going to cut down on livestock production. It's not a maybe. It's not what if. This is what's in motion, family. And I would say this kind of to the producers out there that are in livestock. This is definitely a time to start diversifying your operation. I would never say stop raising livestock or dairy animals, but there's going to be carbon taxes. I guarantee you, Bill Gates has a lot more say-so with your legislators than the average farmer does. And so saying that to say, it's like you want to get ahead of the curve versus, playing reaction. What are we doing to make sure we're growing plants that we actually want to eat in these vegan systems? We had the discussion about Moneybag Yo in his land. We talked about, different cats getting into these value-added products. How do we as a community make sure we're incentivizing them to promote these products to more people? And not only just promoting the products, but making sure we're actually creating them. We know what's going into them. Maybe you don't want an mRNA burger. Maybe you just want a straight vegan burger. You know exactly the plant that was used for it, whether you're using hummus, beans, you know exactly what went into it. And the only way you can control that is making sure that you're vested in those people who produce it. And this is why we talk about supporting these Black farmers. Right now, a big part of the support is just making sure they're still staying afloat in a very cutthroat competitive industry. But outside of just staying afloat today in 2021, we want to make sure that these are the people that are producing our vegan options in 2030, in 2040. Matter of fact, we want to make sure that we got more of our people going into this field to make sure we have options. Because there will be some that's cool with Beyond Meat, and that's fine. Just like Dr. Jabbington, that's fine. If that makes you feel safe, cool. But we know within the melanated community, there's a 60 to 70% apprehension about some of this health that Bill Gates talks about. And so instead of being in a contentious, angry, emotional, fearful state, this is the perfect opportunity for us to participate. This is like the perfect, we have these team goals. One of our team goals should be, we want to have an alternative food system ready to go. And even if it ain't a survival emergency situation, we've created a niche equivalent to your Cash Money, No Limit Records, going independent. I'm going to get 85 cents on the dollar, and I'll give the distributors 15 cents, but I'm the owner.
Also, let's make sure that we sign the petition for the president to release the funds from the American Rescue Plan to our Black farmers immediately. In the live chat, Facebook, as well as YouTube, I put the direct link. All you have to do is click on it and sign the petition. But this is the URL to the petition, www.change.org. President released the funds of the American Rescue Plan to the Black farmers immediately. We have to get this done. We must take care of our Black farmers. Again, there's been a lot of studies since the 90s about introducing mRNA through our food. They're playing dirty pool, y'all. So the only way to make sure, they're already doing genetically modified things. And I mean, it is mad science. Food is a simple thing, but there's some mad scientists like things going behind our food production, and we need to keep it simple.
Check this out. Okay, I'll take my tinfoil kufi off for a second, let my head breathe. Okay, looking at logistics. And so there's this thing called Monsanto. A lot of the community has become conscientious about genetically modified organisms, GMOs. The purpose behind GMOs, I don't think there was like some, I don't think there was some Illuminati faction like, yeah, just poison everybody. GMOs came about through competition. You and I were discussing the concept of competition, is it good or bad? Okay, there's a farm over here that can grow this corn to feed these cows that we're going to turn into burgers and milk and cheese. And there's a farm over there that wants to grow it. Now, growing it organically, that means you're going to have more manpower going out there manually weeding, making sure you don't have any weeds, making sure that you don't have all of these different insects eating up your crops, making sure that you have the most genetically virile plant, right? All of this goes into the yield. The more of the plant that you have at the end of your harvest, the more that you can sell. And so Monsanto's came up with a little concoction of chemicals, and somebody said, this is healthy. You know, there was an approving agency that said, yeah, this is fine to use. This is fine. This is going to help us increase agricultural competition. And so what we saw over the last, 20, 30 years, the use of this Monsanto's just to get bigger yields. We want these genetically strong grain crops. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's what I'm saying. Read between the lines. We got to be competitive in the way that we're approaching not just the food system as consumers, but as growers, producers, marketers. And so after a while, Monsanto's got to become the thing where, hey, this is what most farmers use because we see it works. The farmer next door with 1,000 acres, man, he made a killing using this Monsanto, so I'm going to use it. So this is how your soil gets depleted. This is how you have atrazine and all of these other chemicals used to, make this crop grow better, but then it changes the sex in frogs. This is how you get some of these crops to where, 10 years later, we got these pre-existing conditions that only happen to affect one group a little bit more than the other. Bro was getting on me earlier, man, you're gonna talk too much, but you can't separate these things. They're all connected. This is why it's called a food system. The food system isn't an isolated thing over here, and then the rest of society, the rest of the world, the rest of commerce is over there. No, it's all interconnected. Over time, we have allowed, I'm gonna say allowed. I don't like to take the stance of somebody just trucked us. We were distracted enough to extricate ourselves from this field of human activity, of producing food. Our contention here is at B1AG is we have the manpower, we have the brain power. We have everything we need within the B1 community to reassert ourselves in this whole aspect of how we eat, how people eat, how business is done. It's not something where we're going to ask, hey, man who's using Monsanto's, can you stop using that so we can be a little bit more competitive? I don't think LeBron would ever go to Steph Curry and be like, hey, man, can you shoot less three-pointers so I can have a chance of winning? Competition don't work like that. The way we eat is a competition, family. Before there was a such thing as a central bank, before there was a such thing as a ship, a castle, any of these modern constructs, before there was a pyramid, I bet whoever built them figured out how to feed themselves first. And so once again, when we talk about this getting black to the garden, black to the essence, it's getting black to our PowerPoint of being able to feed ourselves. And either I'm right or I'm wrong.
Family, I hope y'all were able to get a lot of good information from today. There is a vegan burger war brewing. There's going to be more vegan burger producers entering into the game. But we also need to understand the grand scheme behind the push for plant-based meats in the first place is for carbon emissions. I don't want to get that down to zero, so they say. But we also need to be aware that they're also introducing mRNA through these plants. So it is more important, it's very important that we understand this and also understand that it's even that much more important that we produce our own food and know what's going into our food and being aware of what's going on with the food system because it is getting strange out here.
Brother Thaxton, I brought up a great point. Going organic, especially when you're scaling up, requires a lot more work. A lot of work. Capitalize a lot of work. That is absolutely true. We have reported on here about there's huge schemes around the world, people selling organic as organic, and it's not. It's just as genetically modified as anything else you see on the stores. So saying that to say to do organic means you're using your hands a lot more. You're not using chemicals. You're not using heavy machinery. You're not using a lot of things that's going to deplete your soil or deplete your water sources. This is another reason why we have this conversation now. Like, we have to develop a workforce that understands the value of using these hands. We talk about farming and gardening and all of that. It works. You sweat from it. But I've never known sweat to be a bad thing. We can sweat out here on the football fields, the basketball courts. We can sweat out here protesting, asking these people to stop working for their best interest. Or we can exert that energy return on investment, and learning how to produce our own food. Because it's going to come a point in time, family, mark my words. I'm no prophet. I just understand, trends. Either you produce it or you consume what's available to you. The degree that we can take on that concept of a lot of work It's a lot of work trying to convince these people that they're doing us wrong. It's, how many of our ancestors have exhausted a lot of energy asking the factions, the USDA, the WHO, these factions, how much energy have we exhausted asking them to change their course that they find to be worth their energy exerted? And so can we get some of these young cats that ain't going to have jobs waiting for them? I think we've passed that time of thinking your open enemy has jobs waiting for you. And so are we making them be like, okay, hey, you're going to work hard either way it goes. Either going to work hard struggling, trying to keep from drowning, or you're going to work hard climbing this mountain. We want to climb this mountain of success, of perpetual success, wealth building, health. And that's going to come with putting in work. Small scale. We don't need these 1,000-acre farms. And this is why we talk about localizing your food system, activating different people within this food system to do different jobs. There's some people that would do your seeding. There's some people that's going to do your soil prep. There's some people that's going to do your water quality. There's some people that's going to do your distribution. There's some people that's going to do your packaging. The list goes on. There's some people who's going to be working out these equations that Mr. Gates is working out. They might not even need to go out into the field. They just need to, okay, my code is figuring out what is the best way to get this healthy food to this consumer over there without contaminating with all this other stuff, without Universal Records, without Sony, without all of these other factions getting the piece. We want to cut out the middleman. What did the elder Booker T. Watley say? Avoid the middleman like a plague. And so as a community, how are we avoiding the middleman like a plague and avoiding the mRNA therapy within your salad?
Many hands make light work. In producing our own food, we're making sure that we will remain healthy. We're making sure that we will be fed, but we're also producing another economy for ourselves. Can y'all feel me? We're not going out to spend with somebody else to make sure that we eat. We're feeding ourselves, but we're also financing ourselves, creating a way of life for ourselves. Many hands make light work. Going organic and eating well, growing that way, the ancient way, is a lot of work, but many hands make light work. They don't want us to work anyway. They're finding ways to lock us out of the job market. Okay, well, we'll just create our own work by starting with feeding ourselves, which is the foundation of life anyway, and the continuation of life. Can y'all keep? It's very simple. Life is simple. Life is hard and complex, but it's very simple as well. But the practical things that we can do, it does take work, but many hands make light work. They're trying to cut it, no jab, no job. All right, well, let's get black to the garden, and we'll come up with exactly what we need to do to make it to the next day. If I'm Brian, you got any final words, bro?
Brother Thaxton is on it today. Bugs love organic too. Once again, the people with these 1,000-acre farms that came up with Monsanto's, they realized that at the time, and they got on code in these boardrooms, and they decided we'll just use this surplus of this product we use in Vietnam to cut down these jungles, and we'll just use it on our farms. I encourage you to study the history of Monsanto's and Roundup. It was actually just the surplus of a chemical used in Vietnam. And the sister said it's a lot of work. And I've seen your guy. I can't wait for other people to see your work, Sister Moffitt. But it's worth it. When your offspring are watching this becomes a part of their culture. So they're not as perturbed as the bug stinging or, garter snake that might come through, because they saw mom and dad working on this. And to get to the things about bugs love it, okay, once again, this is where innovation comes in. Your neem oil, your peppermint, coming up with different natural solutions for what we see as universal problems. I would rather put some neem oil, find some cinnamon or something that's going to repel them insects from my plant that I can still eat than spraying it down with these chemicals. And so if I can point that out to my son, my daughter, early enough, or partners, cooperative growers, if we got to grow up, if we can point that early enough as a problem to be addressed, then guess whose minds are going to fix it? Because I imagine our ancestors figured out a whole lot of things out in those cotton plantations, because they didn't have John Deere tractors. They didn't have cotton gins early on. They didn't have Monsantos early on. And so there, and to me personally, I just speak for myself. It is a part of my homage to my ancestors that, hey, bro, you're going to have to get some cuts on your hand. You're going to have to get some bites. You're going to have to sweat. I'm going to mess up some of my shoes. I wear some of my best shoes out in the garden just because, you know, that's a personal weird thing I do. But saying that to say, every problem that we see in growing, whether you're talking literal or metaphorical, you then find the solutions to grow better by solving those problems. Insects are a big piece of why some people don't want to get into it. But we understand, okay, we need insects to pollinate plants. The Most High didn't just put insects here and say, oops, I made a mistake. So they're here for a reason. Our ancestors, whether it's like Booker T, George Washington Carver, he would talk to plants. I haven't gotten that deep in my journey yet, but there's a relationship between all of these things we're talking about that you can only pick up by actually putting seeds in the ground and growing. There's so many other lessons to be learned. When we think about what's going on in these the government houses and all of these so-called councils, these high places, these entities and formalities and high places, as above, so below. If you understand what it takes to make something grow and understand what it takes to maintain it, understand what it takes, the sacrifices you have to make, the innovation that you have to apply to make this work, then you understand what the Gates types of people are thinking about. You understand Joe Biden is a pesticide, family. His first legislation Joe Biden's first legislation was a move of pesticide. What did Hillary Clinton call us? Predators, super predators. And so Joe Biden was used. He wasn't the master farmer. He was used by his master farmer as a pesticide. And out of that, we got a crime bill that wiped out a lot of what some people deem as useless eaters. This Gates guy, I've heard theories that he's actually a clone. I don't know. But he is being used as a pesticide from a much higher principality to get rid of a certain group of what some deem as useless eaters or pests. And we're all given that spirit of discernment. We ain't going to talk your heads off today, but this is a great opportunity, family, for us to get black to the garden and push this black algorithm.
And let's make sure that we do push this black algorithm. Like, share, and subscribe. B1AG Daily Bread Podcast on YouTube. The Black Boss Channel on YouTube. Make sure that you subscribe, like, and share. Let's grow this conversation. Let's grow our awareness about the food system. Let's grow our intent on creating our own sustainable food system to make sure that we have an equitable seat at the proverbial dinner table and that we all always have something to eat, because we all got to eat. That's the foundation of life. We all got to eat. So, Farmer Brown, at the end of the day, if you really want to know something, bro, what do we need to do?
If you really want to know something, let's push this black algorithm, family, and let's learn how to grow something.
There it is. Y'all have a wonderful day. Be prosperous. Always stay in a growth state of mind. Let's be firmly planted and deeply rooted. Until next time, B1AG. I'm John Henry Harris. We have Farmer Brown EMC. See you again. Peace.